The council chamber fell silent as the holographic display showed another world dying. Ambassador Velthara watched the feeds with her 3 eyes, each one fixed on a different screen. The planet Korath 7 was being consumed. What had been a thriving colony of 2 billion Valerians was now nothing but gray metal spreading across the surface like a disease. "How long?" asked Council Elder Brexall, his voice barely a whisper. 42 hours until complete consumption," Velthara replied. "Then the Scourge will have enough mass to build another fleet." The other council members shifted in their seats. They had seen this before. 3 times before, to be exact. 3 entire worlds, gone. Billions of their people, dead or worse, converted into the raw material that fed the endless hunger of the Scourge. The Scourge had appeared 6 months ago at their outer colonies. No one knew where it came from. It wasn't alive, not really. It was more like a virus, but one made of metal and circuits instead of organic molecules. It consumed everything: rock, metal, water, air, flesh. Everything became more Scourge. Everything became part of the machine. At first, the Valerian military had been confident. They had the best energy weapons in 3 sectors. Their shield technology was legendary. They had fought off pirates, raiders, and 2 different wars with neighboring species. They were not weak. But the Scourge didn't care about any of that. Energy weapons were absorbed and used to power more growth. Kinetic projectiles were too slow. The Scourge learned and adapted. After every battle, it came back stronger, faster, smarter. The Valerian fleets had been reduced from 300 ships to just 74. 74 ships to protect 8 remaining worlds and 12 billion people. "We must ask the others for help again," suggested Council Member Tirhana. She was young for the Council, her scales still bright purple instead of the faded gray of age. "We already have," Velthara said quietly. "The Kreneth sent a fleet. The Scourge destroyed it in 4 hours. The Yuluri sent their best tactical minds. The Scourge killed them all. The Harathi promised aid but never came. They're too afraid." "Then what do we do?" Brexall asked. "Do we simply wait for death?" Velthara looked at her datapad. On it was a file she had been avoiding for weeks. A file that every other member of the council knew about but refused to discuss. She took a deep breath through her gill slits and opened it. "There is one option we haven't tried," she said. The chamber became even quieter. They all knew what she was about to say. "No," said Brexall immediately. "Absolutely not." "They're too dangerous," added Tirhana. "You've seen the reports. Their world tried to kill them for millions of years. Everything on their planet is poisonous, predatory, or both. They evolved to be killers. They call themselves human," Velthara said, pulling up an image. The hologram showed a bipedal creature, surprisingly small compared to most spacefaring species. 2 arms, 2 legs, forward-facing eyes, a predator's eyes. They've been part of the galactic community for 47 years. They have colonies on 12 worlds now. And they've been involved in 17 armed conflicts in that time, Brexall countered. They fight each other when they can't find anyone else to fight. Their homeworld is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, the highest danger rating possible. The only species from a Class 12 that ever achieved space travel. Velthara nodded slowly. She had read all the reports. Earth was a nightmare planet. Its gravity was crushing. Its atmosphere was corrosive oxygen. Its weather killed thousands every year through freezing, burning, flooding, or wind. Its native life included millions of microscopic organisms that invaded the body and caused disease. Its larger predators could tear through metal with their claws or jaws. And the humans had not just survived there, they had thrived. They had conquered every other species on their world. They had built cities in frozen wastelands and burning deserts. They had learned to cross oceans full of creatures that could swallow them whole. They had even learned to leave their planet before they had proper spaceflight by riding on top of controlled explosions. The other species in the galaxy feared them. Human soldiers were banned from serving in most combined military operations because they were too aggressive. Human entertainment was considered disturbing because it featured so much violence. Human food could kill most species through allergic shock or simple toxicity. But Velthara, had also read other reports, reports of human medical teams that worked in disaster zones across the galaxy, reports of human engineers who volunteered to repair stations in radiation-soaked areas too dangerous for other species, reports of human diplomats who negotiated peace between ancient enemies. The humans were dangerous, yes, but they were also the only species that might actually have a chance against the Scourge. "We're going to die," Velthara said simply. "In 3 months, maybe 4, the Scourge will have consumed our remaining worlds. Every mathematical model says the same thing. We cannot win this fight alone, and no one else in the galaxy is willing or able to help us." She stood up, her full height making her tower over the seated council members. "The humans are violent, yes. They're dangerous, yes. They come from a world that makes our worst nightmares look pleasant, but they're also survivors. They fought their way to the top of the deadliest food chain in the known galaxy. If anyone can fight the Scourge, it's them. And if they decide to take our worlds for themselves after the Scourge is gone," asked Tirhana, "we would be trading one destroyer for another." "Then at least some of us will still be alive to resist," Velthara replied. "But I don't think they will. The humans have rules about conquest. Strange rules for such a violent species, but they follow them. They believe in something they call sovereignty, the right of each species to govern themselves." She looked around the chamber at the 12 council members. She could see the fear in their eyes. Fear of the Scourge. Fear of the humans. Fear of making the wrong choice. "I propose we send a message to the nearest human colony," she said. "New Sol Station. In the Arcturus sector. We ask for their help. We offer them whatever payment they want. Technology, territory, resources, anything." "And if they say no?" Brexall asked. Velthara closed her eyes, all 3 of them, for a long moment. "Then we prepare to die with dignity," she said. The vote took 3 hours. In the end, it was unanimous. Even Brexall voted yes, though his hand shook as he entered his decision. Velthara composed the message herself. She made it simple and honest. She didn't hide their desperation or their fear. She told the humans everything, what the Scourge was, what it had done, how many had died. She included tactical data, astronomical charts, and resource inventories. At the end, she added one final paragraph. "We know what you are. We know your reputation as Deathworlders. We know that many species fear you and call you dangerous. We understand the risk of inviting you to our space, but we have no other choice. The Scourge will kill us all, and then it will move on to other species. Eventually, it may reach your worlds too. We are not asking you to save us out of kindness. We are asking you to save us because it is the smart thing to do. Stop the Scourge here, or fight it later in your own space. We await your response." She sent the message and waited. The speed of light was still the fastest way to send communications across the galaxy. It would take 3 days for the message to reach New Sol Station. 3 more days for a response. 6 days to find out if the galaxy's most feared species would save them or ignore their plea for help. Velthara looked at the holographic display again. Korath 7 was now 60% consumed. In the distance, she could see the Scourge building new ships from the harvested matter. She whispered a prayer to the old gods and hoped the humans would answer. Admiral Daehyun stood in the command center of Earth Defense Force headquarters, staring at the message that had arrived 3 hours ago. Around him, the massive room buzzed with activity. Officers moved between stations. Holographic displays showed ship positions, fleet readiness reports, and tactical assessments. But all he could focus on was the desperate plea from Ambassador Velthara. "Sir, the Council is ready for you," said Lieutenant Yuna, his communications officer. Daehyun nodded and walked toward the main conference room. His boots echoed on the polished floor. He had been with the Earth Defense Force for 30 years, rising through the ranks from a young pilot to his current position as Fleet Admiral. He had seen combat, negotiated treaties, and made decisions that affected millions of lives. But this felt different. The conference room was already full when he arrived. President Ji-woo sat at the head of the table, her face serious. Around her were the 12 members of the Earth Defense Council, military leaders, civilian officials, scientists, and diplomats. Fleet Admiral Taiwan, the supreme commander of all Earth forces, sat to the president's right. Commander Sung Ho, head of intelligence, was reviewing data on his tablet. Admiral Dae Hyun, President Ji-woo said, "Please present your analysis." Dae Hyun activated the holographic projector in the center of the table. An image of the Valerian Empire appeared, with red zones marking where the scourge had already struck. 3 days ago, we received this distress call from the Valerian High Council, he began. The Valerians are facing extinction from an enemy they call the Scourge. It's a self-replicating machine intelligence that consumes all matter and converts it into more of itself. He changed the image to show the Scourge in action. The council members watched in silence as a planet was slowly covered in gray mechanical growth. So far, the Scourge has completely consumed 3 Valerian worlds and killed approximately 9 billion individuals. It has destroyed or disabled over 200 Valerian military vessels. 6 other species have attempted to help the Valerians. All failed. The Kreneth lost an entire battle fleet. The Yaluri lost their best strategic commanders. The Harathi refused to engage after seeing what happened to the others. "Why are the Valerians contacting us?" asked Council Member Park, the civilian oversight director. "They've never been friendly toward humanity. I recall they voted against our admission to the Galactic Council twice." "Because we're their last option," Dae-hyun said bluntly. "Everyone else has either tried and failed or is too afraid to try. They're desperate." Commander Sung-ho looked up from his tablet. "My intelligence teams have analyzed the tactical data the Valerians provided. The Scourge is unlike anything we've encountered before. It learns and adapts with incredible speed. Energy weapons feed it power. Conventional kinetic weapons are too slow. After each engagement, it modifies its tactics based on what worked against it." "Sounds like it's impossible to fight," said another council member. "Not impossible," Sung-ho replied. "Just very, very difficult. The key weakness we've identified is adaptation time. The Scourge can adapt to any single threat quickly, but it struggles when facing multiple different attack vectors simultaneously." Fleet Admiral Tae-won leaned forward. "Most spacefaring civilizations specialize in 1 or 2 types of weapon systems. The Valerians use primarily energy weapons. The Kreneth use mass drivers. The Yaluri use biological warfare. But humans—" He smiled slightly. "We use everything." Dae-hyun nodded and brought up another display. "This is the human military doctrine. We call it combined arms warfare. We use kinetic weapons, energy weapons, missiles, explosives, electromagnetic pulses, chemical agents, biological agents, nuclear weapons, and even old-fashioned solid projectiles. We don't specialize because Earth taught us that any single approach will eventually fail." He pulled up an image of Earth, the blue and green marble that had given birth to humanity. "Our world tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways," Dae-hyun continued. "Predators with claws and teeth, microscopic diseases, poisonous plants, extreme weather, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, floods, freezing cold, burning heat. We survived by learning to adapt faster than anything else. We survived by being more versatile than our environment." President Ji-woo studied the data carefully. "What would we be committing to if we decided to help?" "The Valerian Empire is approximately 14 light-years from our nearest colony at New Seoul Station," Dae-hyun explained. "At maximum FTL speed, we could deploy a fleet there in 2 weeks. Based on the Scourge's current expansion rate, the Valerians have maybe 3 months before they're completely overrun." "What kind of fleet are we talking about?" asked another council member. "I recommend the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet," Dae-hyun said. 127 warships, including 12 heavy carriers, 38 battleships, 49 cruisers, and 28 support vessels. Total personnel, approximately 40,000. The room fell silent. That was a significant portion of Earth's military power. If they committed that many ships and personnel, it would leave Earth's other holdings more vulnerable. "What if we lose?" asked Council Member Park. "What if the Scourge destroys our fleet like it destroyed the Kreneth fleet? Then we lose 40,000 people and 127 ships," Dae-hyun said simply. "And the Scourge continues expanding until it eventually reaches human space anyway." Commander Sung-ho pulled up another projection. Our models suggest that if the scourge is not stopped, it will reach the outer human colonies within 18 months. Better to fight it now, while we have allies, and while it's still relatively contained. There's another consideration, said Fleet Admiral Taiwan. Our reputation. The galaxy sees us as dangerous, unpredictable Deathworlders. They fear us. But fear alone doesn't build trust or cooperation. If we help the Valerians, if we succeed where everyone else failed, we demonstrate that humanity can be more than just survivors. We can be protectors. President Ji Woo was quiet for a long moment. Everyone in the room waited for her decision. Finally, she spoke. When I was young, my grandfather told me a story, she said. During the first contact crisis when we met the galactic community, there was debate about whether to accept us. Many species thought we were too violent, too dangerous. They wanted to quarantine Earth and prevent us from ever leaving our solar system. But one species spoke up for us, the Makari. They argued that every species deserves a chance to prove themselves. Because of them, we're here today. She stood up and walked to the holographic display, looking at the dying Valerian worlds. The Makari took a chance on us when everyone else saw only danger, she continued. Now the Valerians need someone to take a chance on them. And perhaps, in saving them, we can show the galaxy who humanity really is. She turned back to the council. I'm authorizing the deployment of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet under the command of Admiral Dae Hyun. Your mission is to neutralize the scourge threat and protect the Valerian people. You are authorized to use any means necessary, including weapon systems that other species consider too dangerous. Dae Hyun saluted. Understood, Madam President. There's one more thing, President Ji Woo added. The Valerians expect savages. They expect violence and chaos. Show them something different. Show them that Deathworlders can be disciplined, professional, and honorable. Make humanity proud. Over the next 3 days, the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet prepared for deployment. Ships were loaded with ammunition, supplies, and spare parts. Crews ran drills and reviewed tactical data. Engineers checked and double-checked every system. Medical teams prepared for casualties. Intelligence officers studied everything known about the scourge. Admiral Dae Hyun met with his ship captains in person before departure. One of them was Captain Hana, commander of the flagship ESS Indomitable. She was young for a capital ship commander, only 38, but she had proven herself in 3 different combat situations. Are we really doing this? She asked Dae Hyun privately. Fighting a war for aliens who've never liked us? We're not doing it for them, Dae Hyun replied. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do, because someone has to, and because if we don't, that thing will eventually come for us. I've read the reports, Hana said. A lot of good people are going to die. I know, Dae Hyun said quietly. That's why we have to make their sacrifice count. We end this threat completely. No half measures. On the 4th day, the fleet gathered at the jump point. 127 ships, floating in formation against the stars. Lieutenant Yu Na opened a channel so Admiral Dae Hyun could address all 40,000 crew members at once. People of the 3rd Fleet, Dae Hyun's voice echoed through every ship. We're about to jump to Valerian space to face an enemy that has already destroyed 6 civilizations. The Valerians asked for our help because they had no other choice. They fear us. The whole galaxy fears us. They call us Deathworlders because we come from a planet that tried to kill us every single day. He paused, letting his words sink in. But we're not going there to prove we're dangerous. We're going to prove that being a Deathworlder means something else. It means we don't give up. It means we don't abandon others just because the fight is hard. It means we're exactly the kind of people you want on your side when everything goes wrong. Another pause. Let's show the galaxy what humanity really stands for. All ships, prepare for FTL jump. The fleet jumped together, 127 ships disappearing into faster-than-light travel. Behind them, Earth watched and waited. Ahead of them, the Valerians waited too, hoping the monsters they had called for help would turn out to be saviors instead. The human fleet emerged from FTL space in the Korath system, with a flash of light that lit up every sensor for 1,000,000 kilometers. Ambassador Velthera was on the bridge of the Valerian command ship when it happened, and she felt her heart skip a beat at the sight. 127 warships appeared in perfect formation. They were massive, much larger than Valerian vessels. Their hulls were dark gray, almost black, covered with sensor arrays and weapon ports. They looked like they had been built for war and nothing else. No elegant curves like Valerian ships. No decorative elements like the Kreneth preferred. Just brutal, functional killing machines. "By the ancestors," whispered Captain Thelrin, the Valerian ship commander. "They actually came. And they brought their entire battle fleet," added the tactical officer, his voice shaking slightly. The communication systems came alive. A human voice, translated into Valerian, spoke across all channels. "Valerian vessels, this is Admiral Dae-hyun of the Earth Defense Force 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress call. We're here to help." Velthera activated her own communication system with trembling hands. "Admiral Dae-hyun, this is Ambassador Velthera of the Valerian High Council. We did not expect such a rapid response, or such a large force. Ambassador, we'd like to meet with you and your military commanders to discuss the tactical situation. Can you arrange a holographic conference in 1 hour?" "Yes, of course. Thank you for coming. Thank you." The channel closed. Velthera looked at Captain Thelrin. "Alert the High Council. Tell them the humans are here." Exactly 1 hour later, the conference began. Velthera stood in the holographic chamber along with 5 Valerian military commanders. The air shimmered, and suddenly the room was filled with human figures. Admiral Dae-hyun stood in the center. He was tall for a human, with dark hair that was graying at the sides. His face was weathered, marked with small scars, evidence of a life spent in combat. Next to him was Captain Hana, commander of the flagship. She looked younger but had the same hard eyes. Behind them were other officers, all wearing the dark blue uniforms of Earth's military. "Ambassador Velthara," Dae-hyun said, giving a small bow. "Thank you for meeting with us." Velthara returned the gesture. "Admiral, thank you for responding to our call. I must admit, we did not expect such a comprehensive response." "When Earth does something, we do it completely," Dae-hyun said with a slight smile. "Now please tell us everything about the Scourge. Don't leave anything out, even if you think it's not important." For the next hour, the Valerian commanders explained everything. How the Scourge had first appeared at their outer colonies. How it consumed matter at exponential rates. How it adapted to every weapon and tactic used against it. How 6 different species had tried to stop it and failed. Captain Hana listened carefully, occasionally asking questions. "You said it adapts to energy weapons. How quickly?" "Within 2 to 3 hours of first contact," replied Commander Velkoth, the Valerian fleet commander. "After that, our weapons became nearly useless. And kinetic weapons? Too slow. The Scourge units are highly mobile. Our projectiles rarely hit their targets." A human officer named Dr. Mi Young spoke up. She was the fleet's chief scientist. "The tactical data you provided shows the Scourge is essentially a self-replicating machine with a distributed intelligence. Each unit communicates with the others through some kind of quantum network." "That's correct," Velkoth confirmed. "Destroying individual units doesn't significantly impact the whole. They just rebuild." Admiral Dae-hyun looked at his officers. They seemed to be having a silent conversation through small gestures and expressions. Finally, he turned back to the Valerians. "I think we can help you," he said simply. Velthera felt hope surge through her. But she forced herself to remain cautious. "Admiral, with respect, 6 other species thought the same thing. All of them failed. The Kreneth brought 300 ships. The Scourge destroyed them in 4 hours." "The Kreneth use mass drivers almost exclusively, correct?" asked Captain Hana. "Yes, but... and the Valerians use primarily plasma-based energy weapons." "Yes. And the Yaluri specialized in biological warfare." "Yes, but I don't understand what..." Admiral Dae-hyun held up his hand. "Ambassador, may I show you something?" He gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing a human warship. "This is the ESS Indomitable, our flagship. It's a Titan-class battleship. Let me show you its weapon systems." The display zoomed in, highlighting different sections of the ship. Forward section, 4 railgun batteries, each capable of firing solid tungsten projectiles at 40,000 kilometers per second. Midsection, 16 plasma cannon arrays, similar to your energy weapons. Aft section, vertical launch systems for 3 different types of missiles: nuclear, conventional explosive, and electromagnetic pulse. He continued, pointing to other sections. Port and starboard, close-in weapon systems using chemical propellant firearms. Very old technology, but effective. Dorsal surface, 6 particle beam cannons. Ventral surface, mine deployment systems. And throughout the ship, capacity to deploy biological agents, chemical agents, cyber warfare packages, and what we call dirty radiation bombs. The Valerian commanders stared in disbelief. That's 12 different weapon types on a single ship, stammered Velkoth. 17, actually, Captain Hana corrected. The Admiral didn't mention our directed sound weapons, gravitational disruptors, or the experimental quantum destabilizers. But why? Asked Velthera. Why would you need so many different weapons? It must be incredibly inefficient to maintain all those systems. Dr. Mi Young smiled, a strange expression that showed teeth, which the Valerians found unsettling. Because Earth taught us that specialization is death. Our world has hundreds of thousands of different predators, each with different hunting strategies. Millions of diseases, each requiring different treatments. Weather patterns that change without warning. Our ancestors survived by being adaptable, by being ready for anything. Admiral Dae-Hyun pulled up another display. The Scourge adapts to individual threats quickly. But you've been hitting it with single types of weapons. It's like trying to kill a disease with only one medicine. Eventually, the disease becomes immune. He changed the image to show a tactical simulation. Here's how we'll engage it. First wave, nuclear-tipped missiles from maximum range. The Scourge will likely absorb or deflect them, but it will expend energy doing so. Second wave, railgun bombardment while it's processing the first attack. Third wave, plasma cannons targeting the areas weakened by kinetic impact. Fourth wave, EMP weapons to disrupt its communications network. Fifth wave, cyber warfare to corrupt its replication protocols. All happening within minutes of each other, Captain Hana added. 5 different attack vectors, 5 different technologies, 5 different problems for it to solve simultaneously. Commander Velkoth studied the simulation. Even if it survives. We have 12 more attack patterns ready, Dae-Hyun said. The Scourge might adapt to 1 or 2 approaches, but can it adapt to 17 different weapon systems being used in dozens of combinations? Can it process that much information while also fighting for survival? We come from a world that tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways, Dr. Mi Young said quietly. So we learned to kill in 1,000 different ways back. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Velthera spoke. When can you engage the Scourge? We'd like to run a small-scale test first, Dae-Hyun replied. Your reports indicate there's a Scourge formation in the outer asteroid belt of this system. Small, maybe 1,000 units. We'll engage them tomorrow with a single destroyer and see how they react. A single ship? Velkoth looked alarmed. Admiral, the Kreneth sent 20 ships against a formation that size and lost them all. The Kreneth aren't human, Captain Hana said simply. The next day, the Valerian command staff watched from their ships as a human destroyer, the ESS Defiant, moved toward the Scourge formation. The Scourge detected it immediately and began moving to intercept. 1,000 mechanical units, each the size of a fighter craft, swarmed toward the lone human ship. They're going to be overwhelmed, Velthera whispered. The Scourge opened fire first. Energy weapons lanced out, striking the Defiant's shields. The human ship shuddered but held. Then the Defiant fired back. Railgun rounds streaked through space, moving so fast they were almost invisible. They punched through Scourge units like paper. Before the mechanical swarm could react, missiles launched, dozens of them, spreading out in complex patterns. Explosions blossomed throughout the formation. The Scourge tried to adapt, shifting its shields to defend against kinetic weapons. Immediately, the Defiant switched to plasma cannons, burning through the weakened energy defenses. The Scourge adapted again. The Defiant responded with EMP bursts that disrupted the swarm's coordination. 3 minutes after the engagement began, the Scourge formation was destroyed. Not damaged, not scattered, completely annihilated. The Defiant hadn't taken any significant damage. "By the ancestors," breathed Captain Thelrin. Admiral Daehyun's voice came across the communication channel. "Ambassador, we've seen enough. The Scourge is dangerous, but it's not invincible. Give us the location of its main concentration, and we'll end this." Velthara looked at the tactical display, where moments ago there had been 1,000 Scourge units. Now there was only debris. "The main Scourge nexus is in the Helix Nebula," she said. "It's converting the planet Thorax into a processing center. Intelligence suggests there are millions of Scourge units there." "Good," Daehyun replied. "We'll need a big victory to convince it that adaptation is futile. Fleet, prepare for assault operations. We move in 6 hours." After the channel closed, Velthara turned to her fellow Valerians. They all looked stunned. "I think," she said slowly, "we may have underestimated what it means to be a Deathworlder." Commander Velkoth nodded, still staring at the tactical display. "They don't just survive. They overwhelm. They don't just fight. They dominate." "Let's hope," Velthara said quietly, "that they remember we're allies and not enemies when this is over." But as she watched the human fleet begin its preparations, moving with practiced efficiency and deadly purpose, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Real hope. The Deathworlders had come, and they had brought hell with them. The Helix Nebula glowed with colors that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Clouds of gas and dust swirled in shades of purple and green, lit by distant stars. But in the center of this cosmic beauty was something terrible. The planet Thorax was being consumed. From orbit, Admiral Daehyun could see the gray mechanical growth spreading across the surface. What had once been a world of forests and oceans was now becoming a massive factory. The Scourge was converting everything, trees, water, soil, rock, into more of itself. And from that converted matter, it was building ships, thousands of them. "Sensor count?" Daehyun asked. "Approximately 4 million Scourge units," replied the tactical officer, "ranging from fighter-sized to frigate class, and that structure on the planet's surface. That's the processing nexus. It's controlling the entire operation." Captain Hana stood next to him on the bridge of the ESS Indomitable. "That's what we need to destroy. Take out the nexus, and the rest should collapse." "Should," Daehyun said. "But first we need to get through 4 million defenders." The fleet had taken position at the edge of the nebula. 127 human ships against millions of Scourge units. The math didn't look good, but Daehyun had learned long ago that wars weren't won by simple mathematics. "All ships, this is Admiral Daehyun. Begin Phase 1. Throughout the fleet, missile bays opened. Hundreds of missiles launched simultaneously, streaking toward the Scourge concentration. But these weren't conventional missiles. Each one carried a nuclear warhead, weapons that most civilized species had banned centuries ago. The Scourge detected the incoming missiles and responded. Energy beams lanced out, destroying many of the warheads before they could detonate. But not all of them. 23 nuclear explosions blossomed in space, each one releasing more energy than a small star. The electromagnetic pulse from the blasts disrupted Scourge communications across a wide area. "Phase 1 complete," reported the tactical officer. "Scourge formation is disrupted. They're trying to reorganize. Don't give them time. Begin Phase 2. The human fleet surged forward. Railguns opened fire, sending streams of tungsten projectiles through the confused Scourge formations. At relativistic speeds, each projectile hit with the force of a small bomb. Scourge units shattered and exploded. The mechanical swarm tried to adapt, strengthening their armor. "Phase 3, Daehyun ordered. Plasma cannons fired, burning through the reinforced armor like it was paper. The Scourge adapted again, switching to energy shields. Immediately, the human fleet responded with electromagnetic pulse weapons that collapsed the shields and fried internal systems. "They're learning," Captain Hana noted. "Response time is getting faster." "Then we accelerate," Daehyun replied. "All ships, Free tactical command. Engage at will with all weapon systems. What followed was chaos, but it was organized chaos. Each human ship began using its full arsenal in random patterns. One moment, a destroyer would fire missiles, the next moment, railguns, then plasma cannons, then particle beams. The Scourge couldn't predict what was coming. Every time it adapted to one attack, a different attack would hit from another angle. Lieutenant Commander Wu Jin led his fighter wing into the heart of the battle. His squadron of 30 fighters danced through the Scourge formations, dodging energy beams and returning fire with a mix of laser cannons and chemical rockets. "Wu Jin, you've got a cluster on your 6, came a voice over the radio. "Copy that. Engaging evasive pattern Delta." Wu Jin twisted his fighter through a series of impossible maneuvers. His co-pilot, Ensign Tae-young, fired countermeasures. 3 Scourge units exploded as they flew into the debris field. But more were coming. Always more. "This is getting hot," Tae-young said. "Welcome to being human," Wu Jin replied with a grim smile. "We fight until we win or die trying." His squadron dove toward a Scourge capital ship, launching their entire payload of armor-piercing missiles. The ship's hull ruptured, venting atmosphere and debris. But the victory was short-lived. A Scourge energy beam caught one of Wu Jin's pilots. The fighter exploded in a brief flash of light. "Fighter 7 is down," someone reported. "Fighter 12 is damaged and withdrawing." Wu Jin gritted his teeth. They were losing people, but they were also winning. Slowly, brutally, they were winning. On the ground team carrier ESS Relentless, Sergeant Na Young prepared her Marines for deployment. Their mission was simple but insane: board one of the Scourge structures and plant demolition charges. "Are we really doing this?" asked Corporal Minho, checking his assault rifle for the 3rd time. "Orders are orders," Na Young replied. She was a veteran of 5 different combat operations, but this was different. They were going to physically board enemy structures in the middle of a space battle. "Remember your training," she told her squad. "The Scourge units are tough, but they're not invincible. Aim for joints and power cores, watch your sectors, and whatever happens, don't get separated." The boarding pod launched from the Relentless, accelerating toward a Scourge processing station. Around them, the battle raged. Ships exploded. Energy beams crossed space. Missiles streaked by close enough to feel their heat through the pod's hull. They hit the Scourge structure at full speed. The pod's cutting torches burned through the hull, and the Marines poured out into a nightmare environment. The interior of the Scourge structure was wrong. Walls that moved. Cables that writhed like living things. Mechanical components that seemed to grow as they watched. "Contacts!" shouted Corporal Minho. Scourge units emerged from the walls, humanoid machines with blade-like appendages and built-in weapons. Na Young's squad opened fire. The sound of gunfire echoed through the corridors. Scourge units fell, but more took their places. "Move forward," Na Young ordered. "We need to reach the central power core." They fought their way deeper into the structure. Private Bora, their engineer, placed charges at strategic points. Each step was paid for in blood. Private Junsik took a blade through his shoulder. Corporal Minho's rifle was destroyed by an energy beam, forcing him to fight with his sidearm. But they kept moving. In the medical bay of the ESS Indomitable, Dr. Kyung-min worked frantically to save lives. Wounded crew members kept arriving. Burns from energy weapons. Impact trauma from explosions. Radiation sickness from nuclear detonations. "We need more plasma," Kyung-min shouted to his nurses. "We're running low," one replied. "Then use synthesized. I don't care if it's not as good. These people need blood now." A young pilot was brought in. Her flight suit burned and melted to her skin. Kyung-min didn't hesitate. He began the painful process of removing the suit and treating the burns. The pilot screamed in agony. "I know it hurts," Kyung-min said quietly. "But you're going to make it. You're human. We don't die easy." Back on the bridge, Admiral Dae-hyun watched the tactical display. They were making progress, but the cost was terrible. 23 ships destroyed, thousands of casualties, and the Scourge Nexus on the planet was still operational. "Dr. Mi-young, status on the viral payload?" he asked. The chief scientist looked up from her console. The cyber warfare package is ready, but we need to get it close to the Nexus, within 10 kilometers, and we need to hold it there for at least 5 minutes while the virus propagates through the Scourge network. That's suicide for whatever ship delivers it, Captain Hana said. Dae-hyun looked at her. I know. A moment of understanding passed between them. Hana nodded slowly. I'll take the Indomitable in. We're the toughest ship in the fleet. If anyone can survive long enough, it's us. Hana. Admiral, we both know it has to be done, and we both know this ship is the only one with enough armor and firepower to have a chance. Dae-hyun closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them and nodded. Prepare the ship. Start evacuating non-essential personnel. Over the next hour, the Indomitable moved toward the planet while the rest of the fleet provided cover. Sergeant Na Young and her Marines detonated their charges, destroying the processing station they had boarded. The explosion took out dozens of Scourge units, but Na Young herself was trapped. She held a corridor alone for 8 minutes, fighting off Scourge units with nothing but a rifle and a knife, giving her remaining squad members time to escape. By the time they pulled her out, she had 17 stab wounds and had lost so much blood that Dr. Kyungmin wasn't sure she would survive. Engineer Bo-ra saved the port engine when it was damaged by enemy fire. She physically went into the exposed engine compartment in hard vacuum to reroute power systems. She succeeded, but the radiation exposure meant she would be in medical care for months. Lieutenant Commander Woo Jin's fighter wing was down to 9 pilots from the original 30, but those 9 had destroyed over 200 Scourge units. The Indomitable reached orbit around Thorax. The Scourge concentrated all its fire on the massive battleship. Energy beams struck the shields repeatedly. Missiles impacted the hull, but the Indomitable's armor held. Barely. Deploy the viral payload, Captain Hana ordered. Stealth drones launched from the ship, carrying Dr. Mi Young's cyber warfare package. They penetrated deep into the planet's atmosphere, getting close to the Nexus structure. The virus began transmitting, worming its way into the Scourge network. We need 5 minutes, Dr. Mi Young reported. The virus is spreading, but slowly. Then we hold for 5 minutes, Hana said. All weapons, continuous fire. Engineering, redirect all non-essential power to shields. The Indomitable became the center of a storm. Every weapon on the ship fired non-stop. The Scourge threw everything at them. The ship's shields collapsed. Hull breaches appeared on multiple decks, but the crew kept fighting. 4 minutes, Dr. Mi Young counted. An explosion rocked the bridge. Half the tactical stations went dark. 3 minutes. More hull breaches. Sections of the ship were exposed to space, but the crew sealed bulkheads and kept fighting. 2 minutes. The ship's main reactor began to overheat. Warning alarms blared throughout the vessel. 1 minute. Captain Hana looked around her bridge. Her crew was wounded, exhausted, but still at their stations. She felt pride surge through her. Viral payload fully deployed, Dr. Mi Young announced. The Scourge network is compromised. Cascade failures beginning. On the planet's surface, the Nexus structure began to malfunction. The gray mechanical growth stopped spreading. Scourge units started firing on each other as their coordination collapsed. The replication protocols corrupted, causing new units to build themselves incorrectly. All ships, withdraw to safe distance, Admiral Dae-hyun ordered. What about the Indomitable? Someone asked. Hana made the decision quickly. The ship was dying. The reactor was minutes from critical failure. All hands, abandon ship. This is the captain. Abandon ship. The crew began evacuating in escape pods and shuttles. Hana was the last to leave as tradition demanded. She took one final look at her bridge, the ship that had been her home for 3 years, and whispered, "Thank you." Then she left. The Indomitable, with no one left aboard, continued on its trajectory toward the Nexus. The overheating reactor finally went critical. The explosion was visible from orbit, a small sun blooming on the planet's surface, right on top of the Scourge Nexus. The Nexus was destroyed. The Scourge network collapsed completely. Without central coordination, the remaining units simply stopped functioning. The battle was over. Humanity had won. but the victory tasted of ash and blood. 2 weeks after the battle, Ambassador Velthara stood in the Garden of Remembrance on the Valerian homeworld. The garden was ancient, a place where the Valerian people had honored their dead for thousands of years. Today, it held new monuments. The morning sun cast long shadows across the memorial stones. Each stone bore names, human names and Valerian names together. 4,327 humans had died fighting the Scourge. 31 ships had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair, and thousands more carried wounds that would never fully heal. But they had won. The Scourge was gone. 8 billion Valerian lives had been saved. Velthara heard footsteps behind her and turned. Admiral Daehyun approached, walking slowly. He looked older than he had 2 weeks ago. The battle had aged everyone who survived it. "Admiral," Velthara said, giving the respectful bow she had learned humans appreciated. "Ambassador," Daehyun replied, returning the gesture. "I received word that President Ji-woo will be arriving this afternoon for the memorial ceremony. We are honored. The High Council is preparing a formal reception." They stood together in silence for a moment, looking at the memorial stones. Finally, Velthara spoke. "I owe you an apology, Admiral." Daehyun looked at her, curious. "For what?" "For what we thought of you. Of all humans." She gestured toward the sky, where the stars were beginning to fade in the morning light. "We called you Deathworlders. We feared you. When we sent that distress call, it was because we had no other choice. We expected you to be violent, reckless, maybe even cruel." "And what did you find instead?" Daehyun asked quietly. "Soldiers," Velthara said simply. "Disciplined, professional soldiers who fought not because they enjoyed violence, but because someone needed to, who sacrificed their lives not for conquest or glory, but to save people they had never met." She turned to face him directly, all three of her eyes meeting his gaze. "I watched your fighter pilots throw themselves at impossible odds. I saw your Marines board enemy structures knowing they might never come back. I watched Captain Hana stay on a dying ship to make sure every crew member evacuated before her. And I watched you make decisions that you knew would cost lives, but you made them anyway because they were necessary." Daehyun's expression was somber. Every commander's nightmare, sending people to die. 4,000 families will never see their loved ones again because of orders I gave. And 8 billion Valerians will see another sunrise because of those same orders, Velthara replied. That is the burden of leadership. That is the cost of survival. Another figure approached, Captain Hana, walking with a slight limp from an injury she had sustained during the evacuation. She had already been given command of a new ship, the ESS Indomitable II, but the loss of her previous vessel still weighed on her. "Admiral, Ambassador," Hana greeted them. "The human delegation is gathering. President Ji-woo's ship will arrive within the hour." "Thank you, Captain," Daehyun said. Then he smiled slightly. "How does it feel to be the most famous ship captain in two species' histories?" Hana laughed, though there was sadness in it. "I'd trade the fame to have my ship back, and my crew members who didn't make it. They died as heroes," Velthara said. "Their names will be remembered by my people for generations." "That's something," Hana replied quietly. "But I'd still rather have them alive." The ceremony began at midday. Thousands of Valerians gathered in the plaza surrounding the Garden of Remembrance. The entire human delegation was present. Admiral Daehyun, Fleet Admiral Tae-won, who had arrived from Earth, Captain Hana, Dr. Mi-young, and dozens of other officers and crew members. Sergeant Na-young was there too, in a wheelchair, still recovering from her wounds. Engineer Bo-ra attended via hologram from her hospital bed, too sick from radiation exposure to travel. President Ji-woo stood on the central platform, flanked by the Valerian High Council. She wore a simple black suit, the traditional human color of mourning. When she spoke, her words were translated into Valerian and broadcast across the planet. "We gather here today to honor the fallen," President Ji-woo began. 4,327 human men and women who gave their lives in defense of a species not their own. They came from Earth, from Mars, From colonies across human space, they were pilots and engineers, soldiers and doctors, young and old. They were fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, friends and lovers. She paused, letting her words sink in. When the Valerians sent their distress call, there were many on Earth who questioned whether we should respond. They said it wasn't our war. They said the Valerians had never been friendly to humanity. They said we should let the galaxy solve its own problems. But we didn't listen to those voices. We listened to something else. The simple understanding that when someone is drowning, you don't ask if they like you before you throw them a rope. You just throw the rope. Velthera watched President Jiwoo speak and felt a lump form in her throat. The president was small compared to most species. Humans averaged only about half the height of Valerians. But there was strength in her voice and dignity in her bearing. The people of Earth have been called Deathworlders, President Jiwoo continued. We've been called violent, dangerous, unpredictable. And perhaps there's truth in those words. We do come from a harsh world. We have known war and suffering. We have fought and struggled for every inch of progress. But being a Deathworlder doesn't mean being a killer. It means being a survivor. It means refusing to give up when everything seems hopeless. It means standing firm when others would run. And sometimes, it means being willing to die so that others might live. She gestured toward the memorial stones. These 4,000 souls understood that. They volunteered for this mission knowing the risks. They fought knowing they might not return. And they gave their lives willingly so that billions of Valerians, people they had never met, would have a future. We will remember them, and we ask that you remember them too. Not as Deathworlders, not as killers or monsters, but as protectors, as heroes, as the very best of what humanity can be. The ceremony continued with traditional Valerian prayers and human military honors. Names were read aloud. All 4,327 of them. It took hours. No one left. Every name deserved to be heard. Lieutenant Commander Wu Jin stood among his surviving pilots. Of his original squadron of 30, only 9 remained. He listened to the names of his fallen comrades and felt tears stream down his face. Next to him, Ensign Tae-young gripped his hand tightly. They had survived together, and that survival felt both like a gift and a burden. Dr. Kyung-min sat with his medical staff, many of whom were still bandaged and recovering from their own injuries. They had worked for 72 hours straight during the battle, performing surgeries in conditions that would have been impossible by normal standards. 60% of their patients had survived. Kyung-min knew he should feel proud of that number, but he could only think about the 40% they had lost. As the sun began to set, the ceremony concluded. But before the crowd could disperse, Valerian High Council Elder Brexel stepped forward. He was the same elder who had initially opposed contacting humanity. "People of Valeria," he said, his voice carrying across the plaza, "and honored guests from Earth, I must make a confession." The crowd grew quiet. When Ambassador Velthera proposed sending a distress call to the humans, I voted against it. I believed, as many of us did, that inviting Deathworlders into our space would be trading one danger for another. I thought that even if they defeated the Scourge, they might then turn on us and take our worlds for themselves. He paused, his old face showing deep emotion. I was wrong. Catastrophically, shamefully wrong. The humans did not come to conquer. They came to help. They fought not for territory or resources, but because it was the right thing to do. They sacrificed their people to save ours. Brexel turned to face Admiral Dae-hyun and President Jiwoo directly. On behalf of the Valerian people, I apologize for our prejudice, and I thank you for your courage, your sacrifice, and your mercy. He made a deep bow, the Valerian gesture of ultimate respect, rarely given to anyone outside their own species. One by one, the other council members followed. Then the crowd, thousands of Valerians bowing to the humans who had saved them. Admiral Dae-hyun felt something break inside him, the weight he had been carrying since the battle. He had made the hard decisions. He had sent people to die. But seeing this, seeing the gratitude and respect from the people they had saved, made it somehow bearable. President Jiwoo stepped forward and helped Elder Brexel stand upright. Elder, There is no need for apologies. Fear of the unknown is natural. What matters is not our initial prejudices, but how we overcome them. She looked out at the crowd. Today, we are not separate species. We are allies, friends. And if the future brings more threats like the Scourge, we will face them together. The Valerian High Council formally proposed a military alliance with Earth. The treaty was simple: mutual defense, shared technology, open borders for both species. President Jiwoo signed it that evening, making it the first formal alliance between Earth and another species. News of the battle and the alliance spread quickly through the galactic community. Other species began to reconsider their views on humanity. The Makari, who had originally supported Earth's admission to the galactic community, sent a message of congratulations. The Krenith, whose fleet had been destroyed by the Scourge, requested human military advisors to help them rebuild. Even species that had previously avoided contact with humans began opening diplomatic channels. 3 days after the ceremony, Admiral Dae-hyun stood on the observation deck of his temporary flagship, looking out at the stars. Captain Hana joined him. "The final casualty reports are in," she said quietly. 4,327 confirmed dead. Another 6,000 wounded, with 300 of those unlikely to return to active duty. "And the Scourge?" Dae-hyun asked. "Dr. Mi-young's teams have been tracking the remnants. Looks like we got it all. There might be a few isolated units in deep space, but without the Nexus network, they're just mindless machines. Joint human-Valerian task forces are hunting them down." Dae-hyun nodded. Then he asked the question that had been bothering him. "Was it worth it? 10,000 casualties to save a species that didn't even like us." Hana was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "My grandmother fought in the resource wars before first contact. She told me once that the purpose of power isn't to dominate others. It's to protect those who can't protect themselves. We had the power to stop the Scourge. The Valerians didn't. That made it our responsibility. Even at such a cost? Especially at such a cost. Anyone can help when it's easy. The measure of a species, of a person, is whether they'll help when it's hard." Dae-hyun smiled slightly. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Hana replied. "She also said that Earth didn't make us monsters. It made us survivors, and survivors don't abandon others just because saving them is difficult." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Behind them, the Valerian homeworld continued its rotation, cities full of people who were alive because humans had answered their call for help. Fleet Admiral Tae-won announced his retirement the following week. He recommended Admiral Dae-hyun as his replacement. The promotion was approved unanimously. Captain Hana took command of the ESS Indomitable II, a ship built to honor the sacrifice of her previous vessel. Dr. Mi-young received the Valerian Medal of Scientific Achievement, the first human to ever receive it. Sergeant Na-young was promoted to lieutenant and given a medal for valor that she insisted should go to the Marines who died under her command. On Earth, monuments were built listing the names of the fallen. Children studied the Battle of Helix Nebula in school. Songs were written. Stories were told. The sacrifice was remembered. But perhaps the greatest memorial was the change in how other species viewed humanity. The fear remained. Humans were still Deathworlders, still dangerous. But now that danger was seen differently. Not as a threat, but as a shield. Not as something to fear, but as something to be grateful for. Ambassador Velthara remained on the Valerian homeworld, but she maintained regular contact with Earth. She often visited the Garden of Remembrance, standing among the memorial stones and remembering the day the Deathworlders came to save her people. One evening, as she stood there alone, she noticed an inscription that had been added to the central monument. It was in both Valerian and English. "They came when no one else would. They fought when victory seemed impossible. They died so that others might live. This is what it means to be human." Velthara read the words and felt tears in her eyes. She had sent a distress call expecting monsters. Instead, she had found heroes. And in finding them, she had learned that the most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their capacity for violence. It was their absolute refusal to let others suffer when they had the power to stop it. The stars shone above the garden, endless and beautiful. And somewhere among those stars, human ships continued their patrol, watching for the next threat, ready to answer the next call for help, because that was what Deathworlders did. They survived, they protected, they saved, and they never, ever gave up.